At this time of year, the perfect antidote for me against the kind of cold and dark is beautifully braised, slow-cooked meat. Today I'm cooking with ox cheek, which is actually one of my favourite cuts to cook in this way. And because it's a hard-working muscle, it needs to be cooked for a long period of time and very gently, and that brings out the best characteristics in cuts like this. This is actually one of the cuts from the Forgotten Cuts range available at the counter in store. If you can't get hold of cheek, then I'd say something like shin, which again, it's a hard-working muscle, so will react in the same way. Now you'll notice that there's these lines of sinew that run through the cheek. Because we're cooking it for such a long period of time, they're actually going to break down completely, so it's nothing to be worried about. If we're just flash frying it like you're cooking a steak, for instance, that would become really tough and chewy, but we haven't got to worry about that at all. Right, the next step I need to do is actually coat this meat in flour. And what we need to do is kind of roll each of the bits around on the plate, get it properly covered in that flour. And what we're going to actually do is brown this in batches. If we put all of that into the pan now, it would drop the temperature and it would all just start stewing. What we want is to get lovely and golden, lovely bit of colour, and pack in some extra flavour into that meat. Start off with a little splash of vegetable oil, not too much, and let that heat up a little bit. When that's a bit warmer, we'll add the butter, and you know it's time to start cooking when the butter starts foaming in the pan. So that's the last batch of the meat browned. You can see it's that wonderful colour that we're looking for. And now to the same pan, we're going to add some of the other ingredients, starting with the vegetables. So I'm using onion, leeks, carrots, and some celery as well. Give those a little stir. So what's going to happen now is that those vegetables are going to pick up all of those flavours from the meat that have stuck to the pan, retaining all of that fantastic taste in this dish. The next one is the tomato purée, and that's going to add another dimension of flavour, real depth, real richness, and also will add to the colour. So we're adding 2 tablespoons of tomato purée, some of the Worcestershire sauce, and finally a lovely sprig of rosemary. Just give that another stir. Now I'm going to add the wine. And what I'm going to do is actually cook that for about 5 minutes just to burn off some of the alcohol. So the base of the dish is now pretty much ready and I've got to get the meat back into it. So I'm just going to tip that straight in, stir that through before adding the stock. And that's exactly the colour I was looking for, that glossy, deep, rich, wonderful smelling sauce. So all the ingredients are in now. And all we have to do is bring that up to the boil, drop the temperature down, cover it, and then cook it for 2.5 hours till that meat is beautifully soft and tender. So that meat's now reached the end of the cooking time, but the sauce isn't as thick as I'd like it to be. So what we need to do is actually reduce that sauce even further, so it's nice and thick and glossy and really coats the meat when it's in the pie. So what I'm going to do is actually strain that sauce through a colander, keeping all of the veg and the meat ready to go back into the pie, but then reduce the sauce down. The sauce is now reduced, and what I've done is actually cooled the sauce and the meat. Now the reason I've cooled it is that if you try and put pastry over a warm filling, it's actually going to melt the pastry because of the butter. So I need to get the sauce back into the meat, and that's thickened up beautifully, which is exactly what I was after. And just stir that through. So there's a pie mixture complete. And to make sure that pastry actually sticks to the dish, I'm just going to run a little bit of egg wash around the outside. Now, just 2 more bits to go. One is to make a little hole in the middle of that pastry, just to let any air escape. And finally, to just brush that with the egg wash again. We're nearly there. All we have to do now is pop that in the oven for about half an hour, but we need to cook it through to get that pastry beautiful and golden, ready to serve once it's cooked through. And there we go, my beautifully slow-cooked ox cheek pie, absolutely perfect for this time of year.